Good morning and welcome to BBOC Live, presented by BetMGM. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and this is the Week 12 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my BBOC fellow co-hosts, Collin Wilson, and of course, Mr. Brett McMurphy. We have a lot to get to today. We'll give our three best bets. As always, we'll talk two marquee matchups, talk a little SEC and Georgia, Tennessee, and a big one out west tonight, Oregon State, Washington. We'll also talk with fellow BBOC co-host Mike Calabrese for his group of five bet of the day, and bring in the universally loved, admired, and respected Darren Ravel is actually going to join us live for the first time in 2 months. He'll give a market report and, most importantly, his fade Ravel. Before we get started here, I do want to remind everyone to make sure you download the award-winning Action Network app. You can find all of our bets there, in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. Also, as I mentioned before, the show is sponsored by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, before we dive into our first best bet, let's get an updated look at the leaderboard. After we all hit 60% last year, one of us had to hit 62% this year. But guys are warming up a little bit. Collin, you're warming up a little bit. You feeling good about this weekend's card?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have seen this leaderboard 6 weeks ago, it's pretty miraculous turnaround. Let's see if I can get the producer to put in another column for Collin's last 5 weeks. That'll look a lot better.
Brett, not the rosy feeling you had with your pokes after Bedlam. They forgot that there was a game last weekend.
Yeah, Stuck. Before we get started, I got breaking news. UCF just scored again against Oklahoma State, so I'm going to get that out of the way.
Well, you did just break some news, by the way. And by the way, it would be very Oklahoma State for the Big 12 to change the rules mid-season for them. Then they're going to go down to Dana today, which I think happens. But Purdue, big injury news that you just broke.
Hudson Card not playing for Purdue. Northwestern needs one win to get bowl eligible. Congrats, Northwestern, an early Christmas present.
Yeah, Hudson Card, major loss there. And one of their best defenders is also out. But let's dive right into our first best bet of the day. I will kick things off with something that's treated me very well over the years, and that's the Service Academy underdog. Let's go with Army and the Black Knights here. At home, motivation. Service Academies always show up, but bowl motivation here. Revenge from last year. I'm not sure Coastal Carolina gets off the bus. Noon kick here on the road, non-conference matchup that means nothing to them. Their whole season comes down to next week against JMU, where they can clinch the division. And look, when you're distracted or careless, the last thing you want to do is face a triple option offense, which comes down to preparation, reps, discipline, focus. So, and look, the Coastal Carolina run defense has been dreadful all year. I think Army wins this game, so I'll take the points here with Army as a home dog in a great spot. I'm not sure Coastal shows up. Collin, where are you going?
I'm going to head down to an AAC Titanic battle. One of these teams probably advance to the conference championship with a win here. I'm going to take Memphis +9 in a game that I compared to a tennis match. You need to keep serve here. A little Milos Raonic versus John Isner. And really, that's what you're going to get out of these two offenses with SMU and Memphis. Memphis is going to be able to keep up with the firepower of the Mustangs. They're top 25 in finishing drives, and SMU has not been good on defense when teams get into scoring position. And this game is all about standard downs explosives. Memphis is one of the best in the nation with their running back, Blake Watson, quarterback Seth Hennigan, who is healthy. The big problem with them is their defense. Their defense can't stop anyone on the ground. I expect SMU to push the ball. I expect them to get into scoring position. But this is just a thing where SMU doesn't have the defense in standard downs. They don't have the defense in the red zone, and Memphis is going to be able to keep serve. I like the 9 on the board. Should give us plenty of room for a backdoor.
Collin, stick to college football handicap and not tennis player pronunciation. But Brett, where are you headed?
SEC land down to the Baton Rouge. Looking at LSU and Georgia State. More specifically, LSU team total over 52. Look, the Tigers, their college football playoff hopes are done. They're ranked number 15 in the latest college football ranking, so they could make a run for a New Year's Six game. But make no mistake, their number one goal is to get Jaden Daniels the Heisman Trophy. So how do you do that? You score half 100 against Georgia State easily. Look, LSU has one of the best offenses in the country. We know that. One of the worst defenses. Last week, they scored 52 on Florida. I know what you're saying. Georgia State has a better defense than Florida. You may be right. But ultimately, this game sets up exactly like LSU and Army. LSU was a monster favorite, jumped out to a 38-0 halftime lead. Did they take their foot off the pedal? Of course not. They scored 62 on Army. When Daniels comes out, Garrett Nussmeier can continue to pile up the points. Give me over 52 with the Tigers as they set their sights on Daniels winning another Heisman, joining Mr. Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Georgia State also has just a dreadful, wretched secondary that should not have anything to match up with LSU. And unlike Army, who was playing with, a backup quarterback that game and couldn't provide any points, right, to keep LSU going, and LSU still put up all those points. Georgia State's offense has some explosiveness with Carroll and Granger, so maybe they'll put up some points here, which would actually help LSU to keep their foot on the pedal. And I agree. I'm sure they want to get Daniels as many touchdowns as possible. All right, that'll do it for our first best bets. Let's take a quick break in the action and go to our first marquee matchup. Washington will head to Corvallis and take on the Beavers. Reser Stadium should be a zoo. All right, final Pac-12 home game for Oregon State. They have been an absolute wagon at home. Believe it or not, Oregon State is 17-1 against the spread in their past 18 home games. Small favorite here against Washington, who's undefeated, controls their own destiny, obviously for a Pac-12 championship and a berth in the college football playoff. I like Oregon State here. I think that, look, both teams have massive advantages on offense. The weakness of that Oregon State defense is their corners. You should get McMillan back tonight for Washington. They should be able to move the ball through the air, as they do versus most teams. But Oregon State, one of the best offensive lines in college football, just an uber efficient rushing attack going up against a Washington run defense that is dreadful. Bottom 5 rush success rate. They get pushed around. You look at any of the metrics in the trenches. So I think both teams are going to move the ball up and down. What's the difference? Home field, finishing drives. The Washington offense, you could get them a little bit in the red zone when the field shrinks. Oregon State's offense, one of the best in the country at finishing off drives and touchdowns. And the Oregon State defense has been much better than the Washington defense in the red zone. I think it's just a couple red zone stops, hold Washington to field goals. That's the difference. Beavers get it done in front of a raucous crowd. Collin, do you agree?
I completely agree. I'm on Oregon State this week. I echo everything that you had to say, and specifically down in the red zone, Washington has not done well with teams that run the ball. They are bottom 15 in the nation in red zone efficiency against rush TDs. Oregon State, second in the nation in rush TDs in the red zone. It's just going to be one of those games where Oregon State can dictate tempo. They can dictate the line of scrimmage. They can dictate how many possessions are in this game. The team that control the clock and control the ground usually wins these, especially in bad weather. So count me in for the Beavers.
Brett, consensus?
Yeah, clean sweep. A couple of things in addition to what you guys said. Since Washington beat Oregon, pretty much everybody has just said, okay, when we play Washington, we're just going to drop 8 and make Washington beat us running the ball. Well, what happened? Washington has remained undefeated, but they've struggled in games they shouldn't have. Stanford, Arizona State, they got by USC and Utah. Oregon State's final home game in the Pac-12, we saw what Washington State did last night in their final home game in the Pac-12 against an opponent that's leaving the league. And ultimately, I think Oregon State has a better coach. I think Jonathan Smith is one of the most underrated coaches in the country. And it's clean sweep. I think the Beavers do. And I think most telling, this line opened up Washington a small favorite. Now Oregon State's a small favorite. Usually those folks know what they're doing when it flips like that. So go Beavs.
Brett, any truth as someone who has preseason Oregon State Pac-12 future, and they do control their own destiny, I've read that Oregon State technically, them in Washington State, there is some precedences. They could just say that all the other Pac-12 teams are ineligible and play for the Pac-12 title. Are you reporting that will happen?
For your ticket, keep that hope alive, but unfortunately that won't happen till next year. So hopefully you got that ticket for 2024.
Well, Oregon State can still win out.
They could still win it, yeah, and screw the Pac-12 in the playoff in the process.
Yep. Arizona also still alive, and Utah somehow they need a 5-way tiebreaker. So probably not going to happen, but there's still a lot to be determined in the Pac-12. All right, good stuff there. Let's get to our second best bet. I'll kick things off. I'll start. We're going to go with another game at noon. Give me Miami here. Game's right around a coin flip. I think Louisville's a paper tiger. Played one of the softest schedules you'll ever see to this point in the season for a Power 5 team. And they've played 3 games away from home. They got demolished by the corpse of Pitt. They could have lost on a neutral to Indiana. Needed a goal line stand, and they should have lost to NC State if Brennan Armstrong didn't throw a duck in the end zone. They won that game 13-10. Look, this team's been inconsistent all year, and this Miami team, they've been the opposite of Louisville. They played a much harder schedule, and they haven't escaped these close games. 1, because of Mario Cristobal has cost them 2 games with coaching decisions, and 2, because their quarterback play has been inconsistent. Tyler Van Dyke's dealt with an injury. He's thrown a bunch of picks. Presumably he's healthy now. We'll see if he can throw the ball more confidently, but he's been very unlucky. All of his turnover-worthy plays have basically turned into interceptions. Jack Plummer for Louisville has the same amount of turnover-worthy plays. Van Dyke just has 5 more big-time throws. Plummer under pressure is a disaster. You know Miami can get pressure. Guidry's going to bring pressure. And the Miami offensive line, one of the most underrated units in the country, can handle that Louisville defensive line. Miami fully healthy running back room, great receivers. I just got to hope Van Dyke doesn't vomit all over himself, but Miami's the better team here. I'll take them at home against this Louisville paper tiger. Collin, where are you going for your second best bet?
I'm going to go in the SEC, a team that we discussed on the podcast. When are they going to have their hangover spot? And Missouri doesn't seem to have it. They're minus 11 today. I'll go ahead and take that against a Florida defense that has just been getting torched. The last 4 games, a ton of points, 50 burgers on the board, 39 points allowed to South Carolina, 39 points allowed to an interim offensive coordinator in Arkansas. That's not good. So what's going to happen today? Cody Schrader running the ball. When you consider that Ray Davis of Kentucky went for 280 yards on the ground, Jaden Daniels on the ground alone went for 237 against this defense, you would think that Cody Schrader is just going to run wild here. The Missouri defense is improving. They've been my biggest bugaboo about taking them in bets this year because they've been real leaky on the back end with scoring position, but that's actually getting a lot better. When you dive into the box score, Tennessee had 0 points last week on drives that went past the 40. You go back to that Georgia game, they were limited to less than 6 yards per play. You got to think about this. Georgia offense juggernaut right now is averaging 10 yards per play against Ole Miss, 7.5 yards against Florida, but Missouri held them down below 6. I mean, I think the Missouri defense is improving. I'm going to take them today minus 11.
I'm against you there. And when the underdog god Sunbelt Billy gets in the back door, I will be sure to be tweeting you gifs of Billy saying, "Scare money, don't make money." Brett, where are you going?
Going to the Big 12, the Sunflower State Classic, whatever they call it. Kansas State, Kansas. Kansas State minus 9.5, I believe. At last look, I like the Wildcats. Kansas State's 4-1 in their last 5. The only loss, an OT loss to Texas. They should have won that game. But for Kansas, they could be down at third-string quarterback Cole Ballard. Jason Bean did see some practice this week, but this literally will go down to a game-time decision, I'm told. So I would be on Twitter when kickoff gets closer later tonight. Bottom line is Kansas State has dominated this series. They've won 14 straight. Only 2 of these games were decided by less than 10 points. I just think Kansas State's physical style does not match up with what Kansas does. Kansas, without their second-string quarterback, if Bean's not there, they won't be able to keep up with Kansas State. And I think Kansas State ultimately pulls away. This Kansas also coming off a deflating loss last week to Texas Tech. I just think Kansas State continues their dominance here and has their sights set on winning another Big 12 title.
Yeah, I think your bet's going to come down to the game time decision. I think if Bean isn't in or isn't fully healthy or doesn't go the whole game, then I think you got a winner if it's Ballard. So I wish you luck there. Speaking of Brett and breaking news, just another report just came in from Brett. 80% of you watching on YouTube have not hit like or subscribe. Takes 1 second. Thank you. All right, let's bring in the universally loved, admired, and respected Mr. Darren Ravel for a quick market report. Keep it brief, Darren. And then most importantly, we'll get your fade Ravel. What's going on, Darren?
Go you Northwestern, break right through that line. All right. Most bet games, literally not a single surprise on this. Georgia, Tennessee, Michigan, Maryland, Louisville, Miami. Most bet teams, Georgia 9.5, Michigan 19.5, now down to 19. Louisville -1. Most bet overs, Michigan, Maryland 49.5, Georgia, Tennessee 58.5, Washington, Oregon State 62.5. Again, not a single surprise here. Most bet unders, obviously Iowa for the million straight week, 32.5 there against Illinois. Rutgers, Penn State at 40.5, and Texas, Iowa State 46. And again, not a single surprise. Most bet underdogs to win outright. Any guesses? Number one? You got it. You got it. It's easy.
Washington.
Yes. 10 plus 105, Kansas, and then Tennessee. And now time for my fade Ravel. To me, this one's obvious. They're at the absolute height. It's been a very tough week for them. And I think this is just not going to work out. I'll even do the 19. Maryland plus, no, are you going to throw up, Stuck? Maryland plus 19 all day long.
You're already sick. I'm already sick doing the show, and now
you're sick because you like it, right?
I've already bet it, so
yes.
There's nothing I could do now. But yeah, I was already I'm nauseous. I'm dealing with this flu bug, and does not help things. So all right. Well, we've been hot together. You've been hot lately on the same side as me. So hopefully we can keep it going, although this is definitely shaking my confidence. But all right, thank you, Darren. Let's go Terps. I'll blame you if it doesn't hit at least. And for what it's worth, Darren mentioned the Iowa under, which is super low again. Obviously not the lowest total on the board. That honor goes to ECU Navy, which should be an ugly one. That's basically a service academy game because ECU has a really good defensive front, really good D. Their offense is absolutely abysmal. But thanks for joining us, Darren. Darren mentioned the Georgia-Tennessee game. That's our second marquee matchup of the day. Georgia, like Washington, will look to stay undefeated. Tennessee will try to bounce back from an embarrassing loss at the hands of Missouri and play spoiler here in front of what should be an electric home crowd. I talked about this on the podcast with Collin. I said, I make this like between 9.5 and 10. This has come down a little bit, which I tend to agree with. I basically just think this comes down to which version of Joe Milton you get and for how long. If he vomits all over himself, like I might soon, Georgia by 28. If Milton, you get the good version of Milton and they get off to a fast start, Tennessee could be live in this game. Ultimately, it's a pass for me. Collin, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm going to do a first half under in this game. Both coaches had their press conferences earlier this week. Both of them talked about the need to establish the rush and control the line of scrimmage. Kirby Smart specifically saying when you go on the road in the SEC, you have to be physical, especially in this environment. We're going to try to establish the rush. Georgia's usually asleep the first quarter of every game before they get into high gear, so can absolutely see them waiting to score points. Also, when you go to the Tennessee side of the ball, the way to attack Georgia and their 6-man box is to run outside zone. I've seen every SEC team have success run off tackle. That's not what Tennessee does. Tennessee runs a heavy amount of inside zone in between the tackles. As a matter of fact, they've only attempted 15 rushing attempts doing outside zone. It's just not a good formula to try to beat Georgia. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in the first half or in the full game. So let's go first half under here.
Yeah, we've seen Georgia against some competent teams and some not so competent teams get off to a slow start. They're complacent, but it's just teams getting out 7-0, right? And then Georgia answered. Who's going to be the team to get up 7-0, take advantage of the home crowd, get a stop, and score again to put real pressure on Georgia. That's what I'm really interested to see here. Can Tennessee go up 10-14-0 in this game? And if they do, they'll have a real shot at pulling off the upset. Brett, nothing here for you.
No, I just think Georgia's ultimately going to win this thing. Tennessee's 3 toughest opponents, Florida, Alabama, Missouri, they all lost. Surprisingly, this is the first game this season Tennessee's been an underdog, but Georgia's in this mode now where they can actually, they've screwed around with the first half of the season. Now the goal is in sight, the SEC title and another college football playoff championship. So I think ultimately Georgia will win this game, whether they get the number or not. I really don't have an opinion on that.
Yeah, another data point for us to see just how far this Georgia defense has dropped off. It's definitely not the elite unit that we saw from the past 2 years after losing all the NFL talent. We've seen some teams move the ball. We see some teams get a push against them. So another data point, can that Tennessee excellent rushing offense get going against Georgia? And what can Milton do? You never know. Milton against anybody can look awful. But he's got to hit some deep shots here for the Vols to have a chance. All right, let's take another quick break in the action, and let's do a little round robin Moneyline Parlay. Collin, why don't you kick us off?
This one's getting home, although one of them was an underdog and now they're not. I'll start off with UNLV. Too many turnovers the last 2 weeks for Air Force, 10 total. Quarterback issues with health. Zach Layer probably not going to play. That gives off to quarterback Jensen Jones, who absolutely cannot run the triple at Air Force. We'll see if ball protection remains to be an issue. But this UNLV go-go offense is the most exciting offense in all of college football. If you have a chance to get UNLV on your screen, they're a must-watch. They're a play-on in bowl season. They're probably going to win the Mountain West. So let's go. All steam ahead here on the Rebels.
Well, you're finally learning. You're taking the Moneyline underdog against the Service Academy. We're going to take another Service Academy that's an underdog that I already talked about earlier in Army. So let's go Black Knights. We'll go next.
Northwestern, they were an underdog until Brett broke the news. Now they're a favorite, but the interim tag has been removed from David Braun. They're one win away from bowl. Purdue allowed 14 explosives to Minnesota. What? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to take Northwestern here.
Let's go Illinois and your boy Burt. Iowa is a favorite. Easy fade. Give me the Illini.
Well, let's go with UCLA. Chip Kelly and these rumors about him getting fired. This is such a big game. I doubt he's checked out on it. USC fixes everybody's offense. Everybody looks good against the Trojans, and UCLA desperately needs that with Schlee, Garbers, Moore. I expect UCLA to have their best offensive day today and an outright win.
Well, you're on UCLA, which might be bad news because that means Dante Moore is going to be in and throwing multiple pick sixes. But I agree with this one as well. They should be able to run it all over USC. Their defensive line should be able to give Caleb Williams issues as well. This should be like every USC game, should be back and forth. Always a good option to fade USC as a favorite with the underdog money line, given the state of their defense. And who knows where they're at mentally as well. All right, so that is the money line under round robin. Let's take another quick break in the action. We'll throw it to fellow BBOC co-host Mike Calabrese for his group of 5 best bet. Mike?
Thanks, Stuckey. I would love nothing more than to back our New Mexico State Aggies in this spot against Auburn, catching 24 on the Plains. But unfortunately, Diego Pavia is still listed as a game-time decision. Will he play 4 quarters? Probably not, with the Conference USA title berth already locked up and hamstring injury that could get aggravated at any point. So I'm going to put that bet on the side and go with my best bet here in G5 land, which is Utah State as a home underdog to win outright against Boise State at plus 140. Boise State's in free fall. They fired their head coach. Their receiving corps has been decimated by injuries and players hopping into the portal. And Ashton Genty, their star running back, is back at practice this week, but he's had a huge, bulky knee brace on that injured knee. And for that reason, I don't think they're going to be able to keep pace with the Utah State offense that has just been humming in the last 2 weeks. 73 points, up to 16th in explosive plays through the air. Cooper Lega has been great for them, throwing into a receiving core of Royals, Vaughn, and the emergence of Micah Davis in the slot as well. I think this Utah State team is primed to take a jump and to get to bowl eligibility. This is one of the eligibles between 2 5-5 teams. So everything is at stake here for Utah State, a team that I think, their overall record at 5-5 belies their quality of play. They scored 14 on the road against Iowa, no small feat. They came within 7 of an undefeated James Madison team, and they came within 5 of Fresno State. If any of those games go their way, I think the entire narrative on them this season is different. And for that reason, I'm going to play them on top of the fact that they've always been a really good home team in Logan, Utah. They're 4-1 against the closing number at home this season, and I think they win this one outright. So I'll take advantage of the plus 140. I'd play this down to a pick 'em. All right, back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Mike. I'm going to start calling you Cowardly Calabrese for backing off your touting of the Pavia Ponzi scheme on our Group of 5 BBOC episode, which is out every Wednesday. Those guys do a great job. But they're out there touting New Mexico State plus 23.5. Well, if you liked it there, they're about to hit 27 in the next couple of minutes here. But good stuff there. Let's now move on to our final best bet of the day. I'll kick things off. We go Oregon State. Talked about it earlier. Trust the Beavers at home. Research Stadium should be a zoo. I'll take the Beavers. That rushing attack differences in the red zone. They'll convert more trips into touchdowns, get a few key stops. Give me the Beavers. Collin, where are you going for your final best bet?
This line just fell down to a 7, flat 7. We're going to go ahead and scoop it up. I'll take Texas Longhorns on the road against Iowa State -7. Quinn Ewers has no issues with this 3-3-5 defense that Matt Campbell runs. They play quarters coverage in the back end. Ewers saw this for the first time last year. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, just made 1 turnover-worthy play on the entire day. He is not going to have an issue with that Iowa State defense. When you go to the other side, Iowa State's offensive line has severe struggles. They're second to last in the nation in rushing success rate. They're 117th in pass blocking. That is not a good look against this Texas front 7. They have been tearing everybody up in the trench on the defensive side of the ball. And then you go to quarterback Rocco Beck for Iowa State. He is below national average in success rate and explosives against quarters coverage. That's all he's going to see in the Texas Longhorns defenses today. So give me Texas all the way, cementing their spot in Arlington, trying to cash our futures ticket on the Big 12.
And Brett, this show has just been full of Beaver love. One final just touting it for the Beavers.
Yeah, but real quick, Colin's already lost his first bet of the day because he had you vomiting on screen since you're playing a little bit under the weather. So kudos to you. I had confidence.
The show's not over yet. I
had confidence you'd keep together. We already talked about the Beavers. I went through my t-shirt drawer, found this beauty. Go Beavs. It's set. Let's go.
The match is all as Oklahoma State. I'm surprised they found it.
That's why I had to look at the bottom.
I have an Oregon State. I should have worn my Oregon State shirt. So we'll see how it works out. But the atmosphere should be great. Should be a really competitive game regardless. So can't wait for that one. But thanks to Darren, Mike for joining in. Thanks as always to Collin and Brett. Thanks to our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe and like on YouTube. Also, one final reminder, BBOC is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you haven't already, make sure you download the award-winning Action Never Cap. You can find all of our bets there in addition to an abundance of data and content for today's slate and beyond. 959 Bad Beat. Don't forget about the voicemail. Recap episode. Collin will be back tomorrow. I'll be out by Monday morning. Group of 5 guys Wednesday. We'll be back Thursday with the Week 13 betting preview. New BCS Tuesday, live 10:30 a.m. Eastern on YouTube. Thanks again for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers today, and we'll see you on Monday. Cheers.